Little Fox.
King Midas and the Golden Touch. King Midas was a very kind man. He loved to listen to music and eat delicious food. He also loved strolling in his rose garden. One evening, a satyr named Silenus got lost. He wandered into King Midas's rose garden and soon fell asleep. The next morning, King Midas's gardener found the satyr in the garden and took him to the king. Silenus stood before King Midas.
"Why were you sleeping in my rose garden?"
asked the king. Silenus explained how he had gotten lost, and King Midas felt sorry for the creature.
"I will not punish you. You may go in peace,"
he said. Silenus was very grateful to King Midas. Silenus was an old friend of Dionysus, the god of wine. Dionysus was very powerful. He listened as Silenus told him about the kind King Midas. After hearing the story, Dionysus went to see King Midas. He wanted to reward him with a special gift.
"You are kind to my friend, so I will give you one wish. You may have whatever you want,"
said Dionysus. The king did not have to think for very long. He knew exactly what he wanted.
"I wish that everything I touch will turn to gold,"
said the excited king. Then he picked up a stone from the ground. King Midas stared at the gold stone in his hand. His wish had come true. King Midas touched the door. He touched the throne. He ran over and touched the table.
"I'm rich! I'm the richest man in the world!"
shouted the happy king. King Midas had fun turning his possessions into gold, but before long, he was hungry.
"Bring me my dinner!"
boomed the king. The servant brought in a large dish of chicken. But when Midas picked up the chicken and bit it, what happened? Ouch! It turned to gold. The king was so hungry, but everything he touched turned to gold. How could he eat gold? It was not possible. The frustrated and hungry king needed some fresh air. The rose garden was the only place where King Midas could find peace. He reached out to smell one of the roses. When he touched the rose, it turned into gold and fell to the ground. As the king tried to run away, he bumped into the bushes and turned them all into gold.
"Oh, my beautiful roses!"
cried the king. King Midas was not enjoying himself anymore. The king was getting tired and wanted to rest. He laid his head on his pillow, but it turned to gold as well.
"Why? Why did I make this wish?"
cried the king. King Midas was the richest man in the world. He got exactly what he asked for. Everything he touched turned to gold. But he was not happy. In fact, he was miserable. He could not eat, sleep, or admire his flowers. Then King Midas heard the royal trumpets.
"At last,"
shouted the king.
"Here is someone who could make me happy again."
The king ran and opened the gold door to welcome his daughter. She had just returned from a long journey.
Father!
The princess shouted happily.
"My daughter!"
shouted the king. But as soon as King Midas touched the princess, she turned into a gold statue.
"No, no! This must end!"
cried the king. That evening, Dionysus received an unexpected visit.
"Please, I don't want the golden touch anymore,"
King Midas said sadly.
"I thought you wanted to be rich,"
said Dionysus.
"No amount of gold is worth losing the things I love."
Dionysus felt sorry for Midas.
"I wish I had never asked for this gift,"
Midas said.
"I'm glad you learned a lesson from this,"
Dionysus told the king.
"I will grant you your new wish."
Everything the king had touched returned to normal. King Midas was so happy to have all his things restored. Most of all, he was happy to have his daughter back. King Midas was not as rich as before, but it didn't matter. For he learned that the best things in life are not made of gold.
Beauty to die for.
Once upon a time, there lived a young man named Narcissus. He was handsome. In fact, he was the most beautiful man in the world. Narcissus did not know how handsome he was, but his mother did. She worried about him all the time.
What are you holding in your hand, Mother?
Narcissus pointed at the mirror.
It is nothing.
She answered.
Well, good night then.
He shrugged. Narcissus' mother always said to him,
If you do not look at yourself, you will live a long life.
but Narcissus wanted to fall in love.
How can I fall in love if I don't know what I look like?
He said to himself. Every day, Narcissus took long walks in the woods.
I wish I could fall in love.
Narcissus said to himself. Narcissus did not know that many women already loved him. One day, Narcissus walked to the deepest part of the woods.
Oh, what's that?
He said, as he noticed a small pond.
I've never seen a pond here before. Oh!
Narcissus suddenly cried out, for inside the pond was the most beautiful person he had ever seen.
Where have you been all my life?
He whispered lovingly. Narcissus, of course, was looking at his own reflection in the water.
Can there be anyone more beautiful than you?
He asked his reflection.
At last, I have finally found my true love.
It was almost dark, and Narcissus had not returned home.
He has been gone too long.
His mother worried.
I wonder if something has happened to him.
Eating? Sleeping? What good is it to me?
Narcissus spoke gently.
If I can't be with you, what reason is there to live?
That day, Narcissus did not return home. In fact, for many, many days, Narcissus did not eat or sleep. He was deeply in love with himself. Finally, Narcissus died looking at himself in the pond. After he died, Narcissus' body turned into a beautiful flower. The flower's head bends over, like Narcissus peering into the water. It looks at the loveliest sight in the whole world. For Narcissus, it was beauty to die for.
The Trojan Horse. Many years ago, the king of Greece had a beautiful wife named Helen. History remembers her as the face that launched 1,000 ships, because the most heroic war of the ancient world was fought over her. Greece's great rival was the kingdom of Troy, across the Aegean Sea. The king of Troy had a son named Paris, who fell in love with Helen and stole her away. The Greeks demanded that Helen be returned, but the Trojans refused. So the Greek army set sail in 1,000 ships to attack. The Greeks camped on the shores near Troy and battled the Trojans on the windy plains before the city. For 10 long years, the Trojan War dragged on, but neither army could defeat the other. Finally, the Greek king gathered his generals and said,
For 10 years we have attacked the walls and gates of Troy, but our enemy has always beaten us back. We need a new strategy to help us conquer the city.
A Greek general who was known for his cunning plans spoke up. "I have a plan. Let's pretend to sail home in our ships. The Trojans will think that we have given up and that the war is over." "And then what?" asked the king. The clever general explained the rest of his plan, and the king nodded his head. It is a daring strategy," he said, "but I believe it will work." The next day, the Greeks didn't attack, but set to work building a huge wooden horse. For weeks, they labored by their ships and left the city alone. Finally, when the towering horse was ready, a few brave soldiers climbed into its belly through a secret door. The statue was mounted on wheels, and the other soldiers rolled it up to the gates of Troy. They returned to their ships, and the Greek army sailed out of sight. When the Trojans saw what the Greeks had left, they weren't sure what to do. "Stay away from the horse. It's a trick," Paris warned his father. After so many years of war, the Trojans couldn't believe that the Greeks had finally given up. You may be right," said the Trojan king. "We must be cautious." The huge horse stood outside the city gates while the soldiers inside waited. As the Trojans puzzled over what to do, a Trojan soldier brought a prisoner in front of the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "I caught this Greek near the city gates. He must be a spy. He should be put to death." "Oh no, spare my life, please," begged the Greek. "I will tell you everything you want to know." The king agreed and asked him why the Greeks had left behind the enormous wooden statue. "Our army was exhausted," the Greek explained, "and wanted to retreat safely. They decided to offer you a great war trophy so that you would not pursue them. That's all I know."
"So it is a war trophy then? Ha ha ha! The Greeks have given up. Bring the wooden horse inside," ordered the king. "We have won the war," the people of Troy declared, and both the soldiers and citizens began to celebrate as the wooden horse was dragged into the city. It was so wonderfully made that no one noticed the secret door that hid the Greek soldiers inside. No one noticed as well the captured Greek smiling as the Trojan soldiers got drunk. He was a spy after all. All around him, the citizens and soldiers of Troy drank and sang late into the night. When they had all fallen asleep, the Greek spy quietly approached the horse and opened the hidden door in its belly. The Greek soldiers climbed out. They approached the drunken guards half asleep by the city gates, quickly overpowered them, and pushed the gates open. The Greek ships had only pretended to sail away and had returned with the Greek army during the night. Greek soldiers poured through the gates and lit fires all over the city. "Fire! Fire!" the Trojans shouted, waking in surprise. "No!" they cried when they realized it was a surprise attack. Some ran away, some fought bravely, but it was too late. The Greeks had finally conquered Troy. The story of the Trojan War belongs to the myths and legends of the ancient Greeks. It was written by the legendary Greek poet Homer, who lived almost 3,000 years ago. Little is known about him except that he was blind, and many scholars debate whether he really existed. Many doubted, too, that the city of Troy ever existed until, in the late 19th century, archaeologists discovered an ancient city from the time of Homer on the Aegean coast. A great battle may have been fought there, and who knows? Perhaps it was destroyed forever by the trick of a huge wooden horse.